There's a special kind of quiet that settles into a house after the parents have left. The click of the front door lock is like a starting pistol, and suddenly, you're in charge. You're responsible for a sleeping child in a room down the hall, in a house that isn't your own, surrounded by the unfamiliar creaks and groans of a building settling for the night. Most of the time, the only thing you have to fear is boredom. But for the babysitters in these stories, the quiet was the most terrifying part, because it meant they could hear what was coming for them. Tonight's episode contains 5 true stories, sent in by viewers just like you, about the nights they were babysitting, and what happened when they realized they weren't alone. Our first story comes from a girl named Chloe. It was a Friday night, and she was babysitting a 2-year-old boy named Leo in a large, old 2-story house. The parents were friendly, gave her the usual instructions about bedtime and emergency numbers, and left by 8 p.m. Chloe tried to watch TV, but she kept feeling this, prickling on the back of her neck. Like she was being watched. She chalked it up to being in a strange house and decided to check on Leo, who was fast asleep in his crib upstairs. She came back down, and that's when she heard it. A soft, distinct thump, thump, thump. It was coming from directly above her. From Leo's room. Her blood went cold. She stood frozen in the middle of the living room, listening. There it was again. A slow, heavy footstep. Then another. It sounded like a man, pacing back and forth in the baby's room. Her heart hammered against her ribs. She had just been up there. The room was empty except for the sleeping child. With a trembling hand, she picked up a heavy candlestick from the mantelpiece and crept back up the stairs, each step groaning under her weight. The door to Leo's room was slightly ajar, just as she had left it. She pushed it open, the candlestick raised and ready. The room was empty. Leo was still sleeping peacefully, his chest rising and falling in a steady rhythm. The only sound was the gentle whir of the baby monitor on the dresser. She let out a shaky breath, feeling foolish. It must have been the house settling, or a noise from outside. She went back downstairs, trying to calm her nerves. But the moment she sat on the couch, the footsteps started again. Thump, thump, thump. Louder this time. More deliberate. Terrified, her eyes darted around the room and landed on the baby monitor. The small, green power light was on. But then she noticed something else. A second, smaller red light, right next to it, that she had never seen before. It was blinking in time with the footsteps upstairs. Thump, blink. Thump, blink. Thump, blink. It wasn't a person walking upstairs. The sound was coming from the monitor. Someone was broadcasting those footsteps to her. Someone was on the other end of that device, listening, watching, and playing a cruel, terrifying game. She snatched the monitor, her fingers fumbling to turn it off. But as she did, a hushed, static-laced voice whispered from the tiny speaker. "I'm right behind you." Chloe spun around. The living room was empty. But from the baby monitor in her hand, now silent, she could have sworn she heard the faint sound of a child, giggling. Our second story comes from a babysitter named Mark. He was watching a little girl named Emily, who had just turned 4. Her parents warned him that she sometimes sleepwalked, but it was usually harmless. Just gently guide her back to bed, they said. The night was uneventful until about 1 a.m. Mark was in the kitchen getting a glass of water when he heard a soft, sing-song voice coming from the hallway. It was Emily. She was standing at the end of the dark hall, her eyes closed, fast asleep. She was humming a lullaby. It was a tune Mark had never heard before, slow and slightly off-key. It sent a shiver down his spine. Remembering the parents' instructions, he walked softly towards her. "Emily," he whispered. "Let's get you back to bed." As he got closer, he realized her humming had words. Very, very quiet words. He leaned in, his ear just inches from her mouth, to hear what she was singing. "Hush, little baby, don't say a word, someone's hiding in the 3rd closet." Mark froze. The 3rd closet. He slowly looked down the hallway. There were 3 doors. One was the bathroom, one was a linen closet, and the 3rd was a storage closet at the very end of the hall. The door was slightly open, revealing a sliver of pure blackness inside. His breath caught in his throat. Emily continued to hum, a serene smile on her sleeping face. He had to check. He had to know. Leaving Emily standing there, he crept towards the third closet, his heart pounding in his ears. He reached out a shaking hand, pushed the door open, and fumbled for the light switch. Click. The single bare bulb flickered on, illuminating the small, cramped space. It was filled with old coats, boxes, and a vacuum cleaner. Nothing else. He let out a sigh of relief, his whole body trembling. It was just a creepy sleepwalking song. Nothing more. He turned off the light and closed the closet door, guiding a still sleeping Emily back to her room. He tucked her in and was about to leave when he saw it. Lying on the floor, half sticking out from under her bed, was a man's old, dirty work glove. It hadn't been there before. And from down the hall, he heard the distinct, quiet click of the third closet door being shut from the inside. Our third story is from Jessica, who was babysitting a newborn in a modern apartment. The baby was asleep in its bassinet, and the parents had left their landline number in case of emergency, as cell service in the building was spotty. Around 10 p.m., the landline phone rang, its shrill tone cutting through the silence. Jessica jumped, then answered it. "Hello." There was nothing but heavy breathing on the other end. Then, a click, and the line went dead. She shrugged it off as a wrong number. But 10 minutes later, it rang again. "Hello. Who is this?" This time, a low, garbled voice whispered, "The baby is crying." Jessica's eyes snapped towards the bassinet. The baby was silent, fast asleep. A cold knot tightened in her stomach. "That's not funny. Stop calling." She slammed the phone down. She was scared now. The phone rang a third time. Her hand trembled as she picked it up. She didn't say anything. She just listened. The voice was clearer now, dripping with malice. "I said, the baby is crying." And this time, from the receiver pressed to her ear, she heard it, faint, but unmistakable, the sound of a baby wailing. She dropped the phone like it was on fire and ran to the bassinet. The baby was still sleeping peacefully, but the sound of crying was getting louder. It wasn't coming from the phone anymore. It was coming from outside the apartment door. She crept to the door and looked through the peephole. The hallway was empty, but the crying was right there, just on the other side of the thin wooden door. A shadow moved at the bottom. Someone was standing there. An envelope slid under the door. She waited until the footsteps faded before picking it up. A plain white envelope. Inside was a single, grainy black and white photograph, a picture of her, taken through the living room window just minutes ago. The fourth story comes from a babysitter named Tessa. She was hired by a family who lived on the edge of town. Their house sat right beside a thick, overgrown forest. The parents warned her that the backyard wasn't fenced and to keep the kids inside after dark. The evening went smoothly. The kids were asleep by 9:30, and Tessa sat on the couch scrolling through her phone. Around 10:15, she heard something tap against the sliding glass door that led to the backyard. Just a light tick, like a pebble hitting the glass. She froze. Then it came again. Tick, tick. She turned off the TV and listened. The forest outside was pitch black, but in the reflection of the glass, she thought she saw movement, a faint, human shape just beyond the edge of the porch light. Her heart raced. She crept closer, trying to make out the shape. Then something pressed against the glass from the outside, a hand. Pale, thin fingers, slowly dragging down the window, leaving a foggy smear behind. Tessa gasped and stumbled backward. She grabbed her phone, ready to call the parents, but before she could dial, she noticed something strange. The fingerprints weren't on the outside of the glass. They were on the inside. She turned slowly, scanning the dark living room. Every window was locked, every door shut. But the smudges on the glass were fresh. She moved through the house in silence, her flashlight beam trembling in her hand. Then she saw it, a small, square door near the floor in the laundry room, half hidden behind a basket of clothes. She hadn't noticed it before. A crawl space. The wooden latch was broken. The door hung slightly open, revealing only blackness inside. And from within that darkness, she could hear the faint sound of breathing. Tessa backed away, shaking uncontrollably. The breathing grew louder, harsh, uneven, desperate. She turned and ran, grabbing her keys and sprinting out the front door. When the police arrived 20 minutes later, they found muddy footprints leading from the crawl space to the sliding glass door. The prints stopped right where she had seen the hand. Whoever it was, had been inside the house long before she arrived. The final story is one that has stuck with me ever since I first read it. It's from someone who didn't even realize they were in danger until it was too late. Her name was Maya. She was 16, babysitting for a family just a few streets over. A quiet suburban neighborhood, streetlights glowing orange, everything peaceful. She put the baby to bed around 9 p.m., turned on a movie, and started scrolling through her phone. Then she got a text. It was from an unknown number. "Check on the baby." She frowned, assuming it was the parents checking in. She went upstairs, peeked into the nursery. The baby was fine, sleeping soundly. Back downstairs, another text came. "Don't ignore me." Her stomach tightened. She typed back, "Who is this?" No reply. A few minutes later, another message. "You shouldn't have come alone." She looked up, heart pounding, scanning the dark windows around her. The curtains fluttered slightly, but the air was still. Her phone buzzed again. Smile. Confused, she opened the front camera, nothing. Then she opened the selfie camera and froze. In the faint reflection of the glass window behind her, there was a figure standing outside, inches from the glass, tall, still, head tilted. She screamed and ran into the hallway, locking herself in the bathroom and calling 911. When the police arrived, they found footprints in the damp grass outside the window leading around the house to the back door. The back door's lock had been snapped. But whoever it was never made it inside. On the back porch, lying on the welcome mat, was Maya's phone charger and a single, folded piece of paper. Inside, written in red ink, were the words, "Next time, check the basement too."